Morning, everybody. It's the 23rd of June. We are Signal Centre Talking Bull. I'm Joe Neighbour, joined by Steve O'Hare. Morning, Steve.
Good morning, mate. Right.
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Yeah, it's not too bad. Bit more
Good.
relaxed after last night.
The Saka show, do you mean?
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've been
Yeah.
going on about Saka to anyone that will listen for the last few months. Now everyone's listening.
Yeah, exactly.
Stole the show, didn't he?
He did, absolutely. Just to sort of like create, sort of like created exactly what, we sort of like want to see.
Certainly a bit of a dilemma ahead of the next one in terms of selection, but
yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I mean,
you've got to get the balance right.
Yeah, there's not really. Is there enough room for Foden and him? I don't know.
Probably not.
But I think a England team without Foden is ridiculous as well. So
yeah,
don't know. You can't sort of like. Well, maybe you can force them in there somehow. But I thought Bellingham as well came on, 17 years old.
Yeah, fearless, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's that's what we've always said. That's what you just got to go for. But we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, big games tonight. Find out who we play in the next round. So it's Germany versus Hungary, France versus Portugal. So should be interesting.
So without me looking, so the runner-up in our group basically doesn't face any of them. It basically is the winner of another group, I suppose.
Can't remember. It's something to do with how they mix in the best third place qualifiers as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Anyway, all become clear. Anyway, let's get cracking with what's going on in the markets. So Angela Merkel yesterday joined the ranks of people mixing vaccines. She got her second shot of the Moderna's vaccine instead, as opposed to what she got first time round. So that's there's no conclusive studies to say that is a good way of doing it, but some experts believe it could offer broader protection. So maybe that we'll see that more and more going forward, as obviously we try and pump as many vaccines into arms as we can. It looks like the US are going to fall slightly short of their goal of getting 70% of the US adults vaccinated, a first shot anyway, by the 4th of July. But I don't think they're too far away. With regards to Brexit, there seems to be both sides believing that a truce will be struck in the short term. So hopefully we'll get some good news with regards to that. In terms of what's going on the US side of things, the Federal Reserve Chair, Jerome Powell, said that price increases in the economy recently have been bigger than expected, but reiterated that they will likely wane. Obviously, inflation is a hot topic at the moment, so we'll continue to see what impact that has and whether or not it forces the Fed's hand at some point to begin tapering and raising interest rates. So it looks like there are a couple of countries now in Europe that are raising rates. I saw Hungary, I think, were the first to move, and I think I saw someone else was considering it as well. But stocks are pretty flat this morning after those soothing comments from the Fed. So all looks to have recovered. Certainly cryptos look to have had a bit of a bounce back after a bit of a slamming on an intraday basis yesterday. We've got a lot of data out today on the PMI front, pretty much across the globe. So throughout the sort of next 45 minutes, I think well, maybe just now, we've actually had the Eurozone PMIs out. We've also had the French and German. We've had the UK. We've got that out at 9:30. We've got US later today, and we had Australia and Japan overnight. So all happening. In terms of the theme for that, Australia kicked it off first with both its services and manufacturing PMI surveys both actually turning lower. And that was also seen in Japan as well, posting a 4-month low at 51.5. Anything under 50 kind of suggests that we aren't expanding as economies, and that's the key number to watch. So while it's above 50, although it's worse than expectations, it's still considered okay. So let's get stuck into some charts. Steve, what's taking your fancy this morning?
I'd like to dive into cryptocurrencies, as we sort of like highlighted yesterday. There was a pretty serious, pretty solid support level that we were looking to target, and we actually said yesterday a break and close below that level would be very negative, and look to target a move towards 18 to 20,000. As Joe highlighted, we managed to pull back from the brink. The low that we hit is a previous swing low all the way back. Let's get the chart on it. All the way back 28,788. We managed to get below there, which is negative in my eyes. But then you can see this positive amount of volume that came in.
Do you mind if I share my chart quickly, Steve? Because
yeah,
I hadn't looked at Bitcoin for a while, obviously, because you've been covering it. But I had drawn on here on the daily chart a head and shoulders. Now, it was a bit higher up than your one that you've drawn.
Yeah.
But I had a downward sloping head and shoulders that actually completed back here, really, in May. And the measured move of this target, so taking the measurement from the head down to what I had as the neckline projected lower, came in at 29,121. So when I saw this intraday yesterday, I was thinking, looks like it might have done what I thought it was going to do. So I actually had a speculative punt at it at exactly that level. So pretty much nailed the low.
Nice one. I think Tibor as well, our analyst who covers the cryptocurrency, did exactly the same. It was
he was looking for a flush out below 30,000, wasn't he?
Yeah, looking for that flush out, which we got. We got this, a few stops out there, and we just had one big trader come in and decide, I'll load up again here, which will have a temporary positive effect on Bitcoin. You heard it. Yes, I said temporary, because this for me is still going lower. And the more I see it trading from a technical perspective, the more it convinces me. So yes, found support at the previous swing low, 28,788, posted a bullish hammer, and that has led to a continued positive price action. Now, where's it going to go? Potentially, I think, to around about the 36,000, 36,500 is a moderate target for that. Above there, we've got Ichimoku cloud resistance. Will we break above that? Potentially. But I think we're going to run out of steam around about that 36,500 area, and then we'll get another flush out lower. We are going lower. I'm convinced by it, even more so after yesterday's price action. Even this little break below the previous swing low, I think for me is confirmation of that. So yeah, temporary, we're going to see that higher, and it all feels hunky-dory. The reason we're not getting the really aggressive flush outs is because generally cryptocurrency, you can't get the leverage that you can on other markets. So you are getting a lot of people who have leverage at just sort of like one-to-one leverage. So they sort of like they've just invested their money, they're sitting there with their fingers crossed. So what do we think
about people that are involved in cryptocurrency and just have a unwavering belief that it is going to continue moving higher? So the people that are hodlers, as they call them, they aren't giving up. So there must be a point where they have bought so high, some of these participants in the market, that they just have to give up because they're hurting so much. Where's that point? Because it is I don't know if we've triggered those yet, because I think that's going to be what causes the bottom if it
Yeah, I think it's a sort of a complete ban or something like that. Would just then people would think, right, what is the real value of Bitcoin? And I don't know. The last 18 months have been a weird world for all of us, and but if you look at it, it's almost the governments have just said, look, this is what we're doing. You've got to do what we say. I'm not saying they'll definitely do that with cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. I think that cryptocurrency, there is definitely a need for it, and it will happen eventually. Whether it happens with Bitcoin or not, I'm not so sure. I think we get the forks. From the fundamental side, I don't understand it enough to comment, so I won't. But from the technical side, it just for me is, if you understand, what the participants are, how they're sort of positioned, it just for me looks like the scariest thing I've ever seen, because you've got so many people who've invested their pensions in it, and sort of, and they wouldn't have they may have leveraged slightly, but if you're from a regulator,
there'll be a mostly younger generation though that have the potential to earn it back if things do go horribly wrong. So they can afford in the main to take that risk. But I just don't see there having been this mass capitulation that there needs to be in order for it to sort of rise again?
No, exactly. And also, if you think about it, you know, I've seen this before with the .com. I've seen it. I've been involved in it. I bought shares, you know, when I was sort of that sort of age, around about 30, in the .com boom, and it capitulated. And I've still got a bit of paper which says I own a share in a company which no longer exists. So that, you know, for me, that there was money put into that, and it was worthless. The same sort of thing will happen with the majority of these altcoins, and potentially Bitcoin. You know, so if we look at the Bitcoin value, you know, I say to you, right, okay, Joe, Bitcoin's valued at 34,000, and you have an asset, and I say, right, I'll buy it off you for 1 Bitcoin, and you say yes, great, okay. So as soon as you take receipt of that Bitcoin, the sort of value of your asset is based around where Bitcoin price is. So if you want to realize that 34,000, you've effectively got to sell your Bitcoin. So it almost takes the Bitcoin value out of it. It doesn't matter what the Bitcoin value is, does it? For me, I don't know. It's yeah, you know, they say there's an unlimited supply, but when you fractionalize it and decimalize it, and all the way down to 0.0000001 Bitcoin,
create derivatives of it as well.
Yeah, and create derivatives of it. Where is the real value of it? That's the thing I really sort of struggle. And again, as I say, I don't understand the fundamentals of it. So someone can explain it to me, and it might change my mind. But I'm just looking at this mainly from a technical perspective, but with that sort of like view on, you know, what is it really worth? You know, if I said to you, okay, Bitcoin's worth 5 grand and you've got a 50 grand asset, I'll give you 10 Bitcoin. If it's worth 50 grand, I'll give you 1 Bitcoin. It doesn't matter to me, because that's sort of like, you know, the only people it really matters to are the people that are holding, you know, started off and have hold it at sort of like values way down. And for them, it's just sort of like free money. They've made a lot of money out of it. Great, that's fine. But the majority of people won't make money out of it, speculating on it. So that's it. I think we've spent enough time sort of criticizing Bitcoin. I don't want to criticize it too much, and you know, it's fine. Everyone's got their own opinion, but it just sort of like technically it looks shocking. So, and we haven't seen the pain that you would see from these sort of technical corrections yet. I don't think so, anyway. And the more I look at it, the lower I think it's going to go. So I better stop looking at it for the sake of all those longs out there. Let's dive into something a little bit more positive looking. Oil. This continues higher. Let me show you a weekly chart rather than that messy chart. We've gone above the downward trend of resistance. We had a pullback. That was the 4th wave correction, and we're projecting higher now to in the 5th and final wave of this impulsive move lower from $10. From there, I expect an ABC correction, but no sign of it yet. We've got this is all sort of like underlined as well. We've got positive price action with the fact that the OPEC Plus nations are looking at creating more oil production. How did I word it? I did word it in a document this morning. Yeah, we're looking at a potential to increase in production levels. Also, API data recorded a 7.2 million barrels decline in US inventories for the latest week, so that was a positive effect, while gasoline stocks increased. So pretty much this is still going. Can't see anything slowing it down, apart from maybe there's a potential for a little bit of bearish divergence with the volumes. Volumes are sort of like dropping as we're pushing higher. We're in a band of resistance between 72.84, 73.64. Highlighted 75.65 level. Not sure why. Maybe it's from all the way over here. But really, the 76.80 for me is the potential main target for this upward move, and it looks pretty decent so far. On the shorter term chart, we've got we've reacted from the each move cloud at 69.49 and 70.63, and it looks like we're forming a bit of a bullish flag as well. So decent potential for crude. Same sort of thing on the Brent crude oil. But it's trading at $1.50 premium. One I looked at the other week was natural gas. Again, the volumes are declining as we sort of like push higher. We had this triangle formation, we broke out, we posted a bearish outside candle, and we retested that downward trending resistance, forming a bullish hammer in the process, which is very positive. So $3.20 for me is support. Below that, we got $3.16. $3.16. A break above $3.30 should open up another move to $3.38 to $3.43 on natural gas. One we don't normally cover, but I thought I'd throw it in there because technically it looks pretty good. The daily chart on gold doesn't look so good. We've got resistance coming in around about just below the $1,800 level. Price action has been pretty muted over the last few days, and we're forming potentially a inverse head and shoulders though, so one to watch definitely. The neckline here comes in at 1787, but I'd rather see a break of 1790. For me will be a bit of a pivot level. If we get above there, then I think that opens up the potential for an upward move, maybe heading towards about $1,825. But the psychological resistance at 1800 could stand in the way. So nice to sort of see if that plays out. On the more normalized side of things, normalized markets where people do get long and do get short, from an investment perspective, that's one thing they don't do in cryptocurrency. They just speculate on short. They don't hold it as a hedge necessarily. So positive price action, as Joe said, prices spiked back higher. FTSE has run into a bit of resistance at 7106. And that is obviously the trending support line as well. It's just retested that and looks to be failing. Bit of indecision on the 4-hour chart. Cantonar. DAX has, I got short of this yesterday and just sort of had to bear this grind higher. My stop was potentially triggered. I'm just looking at the recent high. My stop, I think, was at 15,685. So I may have just got away with that. But obviously, over the last hour, that's moved lower. And I think, you know, for me, indices just feel like they're struggling up here. But again, every time they do struggle and do get sold off, they seem to bounce back pretty quickly. They're not tapering enough in my eyes, not to suit my position anyway. Dow Jones, a decent rally higher, just posted a high just now, but didn't quite get back above the 2 o'clock high on the 4-hour chart on the 17th of June, which was 34,088. We got up to 34,040, so stalled there, posting a shooting star candle, potentially shooting star formation. We'll see how that plays out today. And oh yeah, join us for a shooting star candle on the Nasdaq, which is something we can get rid of this head and shoulders formation because that broke above it yesterday and punched higher, hitting a new all-time high, coming in at 14,325. Currently we're about 50 points lower, forming that negative looking candle. But I still don't know whether I'd go with it just yet. I think I'd want some confirmation on the following 4-hour candle. S&P's showing the same thing, a bit of a rejection this morning in the European session. Will it last until the afternoon? Generally, it doesn't. We've had a bit of a recovery in the China 50. For me, is the one that's going to be leading the way lower, and I've said it all along. We've got decent resistance above, coming in about 300 points higher, 17,500, and also 17,600. So a bit of a band of resistance along with the Ichimoku cloud. But for me, a bit of an opportunity to sell anything that rallies in terms of China 50. Aussie 200 a little bit under pressure. Hang Seng has had a nice move up, but found resistance at the cloud. I think I've talked enough, Joe.
That's fantastic. I think the French and German market seem to have had a bit of a dip lower in the last hour or so off the back of the weaker PMI numbers. So we've got UK at 930, maybe jump on the FTSE ahead of that, but obviously FTSE is a little bit different in its makeup. So maybe it's, well, I assume it's already priced that in. But anyway, on to FX. Leave it alone.
Oh, sorry about that.
So yesterday was quite interesting because we looked as though we were pushing higher first thing, and this was off the back of the engulfing candle that we saw at the previous day. So obviously highlighted some concern because of that. We looked as though we were fighting back yesterday, but into the close, we were much lower than the day previous. So we've continued that selling, and looks like we're in for a bit of further weakness today. So the key question now is whether or not this is a retest of this broken trend line and the what should now be a support at 91.44, 91.43. So waiting to see if indeed that does do a job, and whether or not that will attract any fresh buying interest back to the dollar index, because obviously this is really what's going to drive everything else. So quite an interesting point here as to whether or not this is just a corrective move back following this sharp move up, or whether or not we are actually going to see a continuation lower. So looking at euro dollar, flip side of obviously what we've just shown on the dollar index, we had this bullish engulfing candle that formed on the 21st. We saw a continuation higher yesterday, and we're pushing a bit higher today. We've got obviously a lot of PMI data out today. Most of Europe now appears to have been done, and we are seeing sort of euro dollar pretty flat at the moment. So in the short term, I'd be looking for a retest of this level here after the impulsive breakdown that we saw last week. So the first resistance level I've got is at 119.86. Above that, we've got the nice round number of 1.2 to potentially target as well, and above that an additional level at 120.26. So if you are of the opinion that dollar index is bottoming out, and you like the idea of this potentially being a head and shoulders top on euro dollar over the more medium term, then I'd be looking to fade into this kind of region here on a short-term basis for a potential move, at least to try and test this neckline down here that I'm proposing is today between 117.72 and 117.04. From a personal perspective, I always want to see horizontal breaks rather than uptrending or downtrending breaks when it comes to head and shoulders top. So I'd personally be looking for a 117.04 to confirm this pattern. Still got a fair amount to do. As you can see from the volumes on the daily charts in recent sessions, we have actually seen a little bit of a pickup in participation as well. So potentially something bigger happening here. For me, the bias is still to the downside here while we see a continued correction in the dollar index. If we look at cable, this is an interesting one as well. We saw this breakdown last week from this bullish channel. There was a gap that was filled and didn't actually do anything as a support level, but it's now retesting that from the underside. That blue line there you can see at 139.85. So is that going to attract any selling interest? Looks like there's some decent buying taking place over the last couple of days, as we saw on a number of markets. A bullish engulfing here against the US dollar was posted on the 21st. So interesting level to potentially fade if you think this is potentially topping out and we are going to see continued dollar strength. We've got the PMI due out in 20 minutes for the UK, so it could be an interesting time to consider a position, but clearly will be risky. And if you think about the break of trend here, what you often see after that is sort of a period of chop. And a lack of direction. So this might be quite a difficult market to trade in the very short term. So be careful if that is on your hit list today for trading. What else have we got? So euro yen, that's quite interesting because we've seen a break of trend here. This trend line's actually been in place for quite some time. If we go down to these lows here that we posted in May last year, we've seen quite a decent break there, but again rallied back quite strongly. A bullish outside day posted on the 21st of June, and now we're back higher. So is this going to be maybe a retest of the sort of mini top that formed here, maybe at 132.65 as an area to target? Not so sure. Maybe one to keep an eye on, I think, because I think this breaker trend is quite pivotal and could lead to a corrective move to the downside in the short term. And that is actually again coming back into favor as a safe haven. So maybe more money going into safe havens. We've obviously ignored that quite a lot recently because it's been absolutely smashed to pieces, the yen in a sort of standalone basis. So maybe we are starting to see a push back towards these safe havens like the dollar index and potentially the Swiss franc as well. Elsewhere, dollar Swiss, only a mild pullback on that at the moment. Again, I think dollar probably looks quite strong against the dollar, the Swiss franc, but I still fancy the Swiss franc as a safe haven asset, so might not be massive amounts of movements in that, and probably the same for dollar yen. Dollar still outperforming the yen. This is approaching a key level here at 110.96. Retesting this previous high from the 31st of March. If it can overcome that, then we're targeting some previous swing highs that we saw in and around the sort of height of the pandemic last year. First level to target is 111.71. Then above that we have 112.18. So that will pretty much do for a roundup on the FX front.
Nice one.
Okay, gun to the head yesterday. Steve, I messaged you intraday to say that everything was looking hunky-dory for your Bitcoin trade. I think you were about 4R on side at one point when it's below 30,000 down to lows of 29,100 and something. But come the 9 o'clock close, you're actually only 70 or 69 pips on side with Bitcoin on 0.07R. So obviously it could have been worse, but it certainly could have been better. But that's the game, unfortunately. In that instance, I think you're probably glad that you were stopped out at 9 o'clock rather than letting it run.
Exactly. That's about the way it happens, isn't it? It's easy come, easy go. You never know, do you? So
No.
yeah, that's if I was trading that myself and you're sort of seeing a 4% return in just a few hours, you're sort of tempted to take partial profit, but
You
can't
certainly
do
probably
that with a gun to
you
our
would
head.
have managed it, maybe.
Yeah, but yeah, no, that's, I think them sort of markets, even when it sort of like did get back to flat, it went offside for a while and then it came back on side. I was thinking, oh, I feel comfortable with it still.
Yeah.
But obviously the fact that it reacted off a decent support level would have made me think, right, okay, we should now get some follow through, just a technical correction. And we're seeing that now potentially to 36,500.
Yeah. I got stopped out on Aussie US dollar. That's 5 stop outs in a row, so a bit of a stinking run at the minute on the gun to the head calls. So I need to sort myself out and get back in tune with the markets. Steve, have you got anything you fancy?
Not really. Everything sort of like seems to be just outside of where I'd like to take it on. Am I going to go for this? I'm already short of DAX, so I don't want to lose money on. Okay, let's go with FTSE. Joe's convinced me. He said this is at 9:30. This is going to collapse. That's what he said. I heard it. I heard him say it. So let's get a little stop in there. Getting short here at 70.92. We're going to have 71.17 stop. And what about the upside? Let's go for a 3-to-1, a 4-to-1 risk reward, targeting a move to 69.92 within the sort of like parameters of possibility today. So yeah, short FTSE.
Okay, I'm going to keep the theme UK as well, because obviously we've got this data out in the next 15 minutes. So just scanning through some intraday charts, just looking at anything sterling related to see what looks of interest, see if there's anything at a glance that I can say, oh, okay, I can recognize some sort of pattern there. And the only one that really stood out was New Zealand dollar. And maybe what we're seeing here, and this is very, very short term, is head and shoulders top on the hourly. Does that even count? Because is that higher? Oh, yeah. Doesn't even work, does it? Because that left shoulder's higher. Oh, well, maybe some sort of topping pattern taking shape there. But what really interested me was this candle over the last hour, actually, because that looks quite bearish, as you can see. So I'm going to jump on that. I'm up against it pressure-wise. I've got to get something on. Going to sell that now at 198.68. And I'm going to target a move down to these lows here. As you can see, there's a number of lows here to potentially target. So let's go 197.05. Yeah, so looking for about 3R on that one, 2.9R.
Nice
that
one.
198.66. So yeah, PMIs in 15 minutes. Be very careful if you are even thinking of getting involved in anything sterling related in the next 15 minutes. Okay, as we mentioned, there is a lot of PMI data out today. The next data point after the UK at 9:30 is from the US, and that's at 2:45. Expected to fall to 62. and services to fall to 69. At 3 o'clock, we've got new home sales in the US, and then at 3:30 we've got the US crude oil inventories. So plenty to keep us interested today. I think we've also got a Fed speaker as well to keep an eye out for later today. So potentially more information and news coming out, or soothing tones from the Federal Reserve members about inflation worries. So we'll have to wait and see. But Steve, I think that's it. We can wrap it up. A bit of a longer one today. We'll be back in the morning.
Lovely. Okay. Cheers, Joe.
Have a good one.
Good
Bye
luck,
bye.
everyone.